Hey, welcome to another episode of the Best Business in the World podcast. I'm Sri McKee. I'm here with Matt Fitzsimmons. Um, Matt, what's our
Good
topic of the
morning.
week?
Interesting topic, this one. Um, Culture. Um, how do we get a high performing culture in a business? You know how some businesses, everything they touch seems to just turn to gold, and it's not something that's maybe easily touched upon, but they just have this culture that just gets stuff done. So I'd love to have a yarn about that and get your thoughts on what actually creates a culture whereby performance is the norm and not just turning up to work and clocking in and out is the norm.
Yeah, uh, there's a saying, I think people have heard it, and it makes, I don't know, when I first heard it, I'm not sure it made a ton of sense, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it's probably true, but that doesn't mean you don't have a strategy. So there's a lot of the stuff that's kind of one's contingent upon the other, right? But you can have a strategy with a low performing culture and you're not going to get very much done. So it's really that high performing culture, even with a vague strategy, you're still probably going to win out. So that's where those sayings kind of come from. Um,
Yeah.
we can delve in. Why don't we just dive into it? Part of our theme here is that we want to help you make your business simple, easy, and profitable, simpler than it is now, easier to run, and more profitable. What we're about to dive into, goes to all three, really, but it's going to make things a lot simpler in your day to day and a lot easier to run. And ultimately, that turns into profitability, right?
Profitability, absolutely. The funny thing about culture is um, people see the outcome of culture and they think that this
Mm.
must be really a big mountain for us to climb. Culture is actually one of the simplest things that you can actually do is develop a culture in a business, because it's just a series of deliberate actions. And it's, I mean, like, so you can develop this starting this afternoon. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to wait till you have a strategy day or anything like this. You can start asking the questions and doing that sort of stuff straight away. And if you get our book, there's a whole section on that that you can get stuck into, like literally right
Yeah.
away, and start asking your team about stuff and getting their thoughts on what is going to drive the business forward as far as the culture goes.
So I mentioned to you earlier, we got into a Twitter debate with somebody, and it ends up, whatever. Anybody can go back and look at my Twitter. He probably shouldn't, but um, he kind of started with the premise that we should do away with the word culture in business. It's not helpful. It's too muddy and all this. And I do agree that it's largely misunderstood. But the point here is that your culture exists, and we all know this. Um, Cultures exist, and if you think about, like, from a bigger picture perspective and societies and that type of thing, we have these rules and behaviors that we expect of each other. If you greet someone in France, it's common to, hug and kisses on the cheek. If you do that in the US, they think you're weird, right? You shake hands. If you meet someone in Japan, there's kind of a ritual, and bowing and status comes into it, and family and all that. But there are expectations of manners, politeness, what you say in different societies that are different, and
Hey,
those
I've
are,
got one for you. I've got one for you,
yeah.
Sturdy. How's this? So this is something that you possibly won't have heard of previously, but um, I have a client of mine who I'm going to see at a board meeting later on this morning, and we will greet each other with a hongi. Now, a hongi is when two men, well, yeah, I know, when two men will meet and they touch noses. So rather than
Hmm.
shaking hands, which you normally do, you touch noses. And it's so you're normally shaking hands at the same time. You put your arm on his shoulder, and
Hmm.
then you'll lean in and they'll touch noses. And that's the Maori protocol for when you haven't seen someone for a long period of time, or the meeting is actually really significant. So whilst I'm not of Maori blood, I will do that as a sign of respect to my client. So, and that's the norm in their culture. So that's, sorry, a bit of useless
Right.
trivia, but
Well, no, but I think it's
um,
really relevant,
it's
because
another one.
when you're moving into somebody else's culture, it's expected that yeah, you're going to bring some of your own with you and your expectations, but you're transitioning. You're really expected to start observing their norms, right? Another example. Here's a random one. If you're in a Japanese family eating around the table and you want to grab something from the serving dish, you take your hashi, you take your chopsticks and you flip them around and you use the side that doesn't go in your mouth and you pull it out and put it on your plate, right?
Yeah.
If you do that in China, people will like literally almost gag and throw up. They think that's disgusting because your hands have been on that part of the chopstick. And
Wow.
so anyway, it's there are all these little things, and I guess in our businesses, no, you're not going to necessarily lay out all your rules for table manners, right? Or for maybe greeting people. I don't know. But the idea here is it exists, and are you going to be intentional and deliberate about it, or are you just going to let it happen by default?
Yeah. Yeah. And all the companies that I've dealt with who have incorporated a strong set of values into what they do have benefited from it. And so the benefits always tend to find their way to the bottom line.
Mm.
Although what they tend to do is just have this amazing culture where people tend to enjoy their work more because it's kind of everyone kind of understands the rules of the game. The customers kind of know that they're going to get what they got last time this time because there's a culture. So there's a real consistency that comes in around that company. Also, when people are being onboarded, if you've got a strong set of culture, a strong set of values, it's easy to onboard someone because you can say, well, hey, here are our values. This is what they mean to me.
Well, and
This
you
is
bring
what
up
it
a really
means.
good point, and we should probably define the values. So the way we define core values are really those behavioral expectations. They're not what we believe in or aspirational or something. They're really what we expect from each other in the organization. So it's the way we do things around here. It is more of a binary. This is your chance to really decide and be deliberate about what does right and wrong look like in your organization. And it's really important to be explicit and to do it in ways that are understandable by everybody. So one of my pet peeves is the single word values. Communication.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
communication ain't a value, right? Number one, and a big part of that is it can also be interpreted. If I have 15 different people in my organization, I'm going to have 17 different definitions for communication, right? And so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day.
Mm.
So if you have a belief system and expectation around how communication should be, start laying that out. Like, listen to understand, engage with, or ensure clarity, engage with candor. That was one of our core values that actually, Matt, you helped me develop way back in a previous company. But it became obvious. And by the way, it wasn't one of our first core values. It came about later because we realized that we had an expectation that wasn't being met in all instances, and it evolved too because we're like, listen to understand was kind of a starting point with that, really important in the healthcare field.
Mm.
Kind of guided behavior, don't interrupt your patients, really, make sure you're really hearing them. And then it kind of evolved into that part of it, ensure clarity. You got to reflect back and make sure that what I think you said to me, that you also agree and you actually said it. So there's that.
Yeah.
And then we found that, yeah, but people were trying to take care of each other's feelings and they wouldn't say everything. And then of course, if you put stuff off, that blew up later, more often than not. So it was like, candor, and actually a friend of mine, Darren Hicks, through EO, was a former Navy SEAL, and he took over his father's company, and he realized that the candor part in the SEALs and where he had been working with people for the previous decade plus wasn't really part of the culture in the company that he was taking over. And it was super important to him to bring that. And when he told the stories around that and stuff to me, I was and to a couple other folks in EO, I was like, that's so critical. And realizing it was a missing part of what we had, we went back, and that communication theme value turned into listen, understand, ensure clarity, engage with candor. So a little longer than we generally recommend your core value be, but it kind of evolved over time. And if you could remember that, and I remember that from years ago now, right? That guided the behavior. What am I supposed to do in this situation? I don't really
Mm.
want to confront Matt about this. I don't know. The value is engage with candor. I need to be open and honest with him. I need to share everything. I can do that in a
Yeah.
respectful way, whatever. But it's important I don't let this sit and fester. And that
But
was
it's
an
also, if I was within your business and you had
Mhm.
to engage with me with candor, I should be able to recognize that you're actually living the values of the business. And as much as
Exactly.
it might not be a pleasant conversation always, I respect you immensely for actually engaging with candor, actually living that value. So if I'm living the company values and one of the values is engage with candor, then I also have to be able to be open to being engaged with candor as well, in order for
Absolutely.
that value to be lived.
Right. And that brings up another great point too, because it has to be all directions. Right. So if I'm and what I kind of go over with clients is one of the worst things you can do is be explicit about core values and behavioral expectations and then not live them. You will
Mm,
undermine your own integrity. You'll undermine your culture because what you're then saying is this explicit declaration of what we expect isn't really what we expect. And if you're doing that or you're tolerating it among your team, right? It's I can think of all kinds of examples. I've got kids in school and stuff, and some kids are held more to account than others, right? Some are given a
uh,
pass when they misbehave because their family situation or because whatever. And
so
then
true. Yeah,
right, and then what do those other kids think? So that's a
yeah,
real potential hazard in implementation of core values in your company. It's got to be consistent across everyone, including you,
yeah.
the founder.
So we've seen that so often, though, haven't we? Just like,
Oh yeah.
the core values, they apply to me, but not to you. They're for
Right.
managing the staff. No, if the leader isn't leading them, they're worthless.
Oh, I've seen that, and that ends up being one of the most toxic cultures when it's expected of the frontline employees or everybody below director level or whatever it is, but the C-suite is exempt. Oh, that's a great recipe for a toxic culture.
That's why I and you specialize in small businesses and not the big corporates.
Yeah.
I've done the corporate thing, mate, and you see that all the time. Is just, oh no, no, that's not about us. No,
We're
we don't
above
have
the
to worry about
law.
that. That's for the workers.
Yeah. It's that idea of being above the law that it doesn't apply to me, that I'm special or exempt. And
There's actually a really cool litmus test too that you can put your values through, and which is what I ask all my clients: is before you confirm that these are your values and this is what you stand for, and this is this is how we do what we do. Is, are you willing to hire people based on their ability to align and work with the values? Are you equally willing to fire those people, anybody, even your top performer, if they are not willing to live by your values? And
right.
as the owner or senior manager within a business, are you willing to take a financial hit to uphold your values?
Mhm.
Now, if you can tick those three boxes, you're probably getting pretty close to where your values should be. So hire, fire, and take a financial hit.
Yeah.
Because it's the financial hit often that gets people, because they sit there and go, I really like them, but if I had to take it, oh yeah, and done about that.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. There's one more that I like adding into that mix, and that's would you grade somebody on it? Would you rate them? Um, as a feedback
Right.
mechanism or part of the review process and stuff, or in the hiring process. And
Yeah.
you know, again, that kind of comes back to really, as you said, the litmus test: is it really a value, or is it a nice to
Mm,
have? Because what we're talking
yeah.
about here is not nice to haves and we wish everybody was doing this but we'll let it slide x amount. No, this is your declaration, this is your line in the sand. These are the things we do. Now, that having said that, people will make mistakes, right? We will mess up. We're human,
Sure.
right? And I'm going to violate a value at some point. The important part there is to be able to acknowledge it and kind of do some self correction, or
Yeah.
hear the feedback and realize, yeah, and think about, okay, so my behavior wasn't exemplary. How do I, what am I going to do next time? And what do I need to do
Mm.
to fix the situation or correct it, in line with the core values? Right. So what's another
Yeah.
benefit of having this stuff explicitly stated, Matt? What do you think?
I think probably the coolest thing is it's like when you belong to a club or a group or whatever, there are norms, and in every group
Sure.
there is a set of norms, right? And what it does is it actually makes the team kind of bond together because we're all doing this thing, and we've all got a set of values, and we kind of already know what we're about because it's defined. We've actually written down what we're about, and so I can align to that club. I mean, when I was a kid, and I was a Boy Scout. And as being a part of a Boy Scout, you had a uniform and there was a bandana that you wore around.
Neckerchief.
Yeah, that's the one. And it had a little leather toggle here, and we all looked the same. But there was also a set of values that you signed up to. And when you did that, you became part of an exclusive little cool club. And when you're a young fella and you're learning about what it means to be part of a team and a club and that sort of thing, it's like, oh, these rules sort of helped me understand what it meant to be part of it, and that we would defend those rules because it meant that that's who we were. So we all got a little bit tighter together just as a result of having these sort of rules and the way that we roll with each other and how we dealt with each other, which was really cool. So I'm not sure if it was, I'm not sure what the psychological name for it would be, but we had this ownership of it and our a bind between all of us with it. We were bound together with it.
Well, yeah,
And
just
I saw that when I
belonging.
was a Boy Scout. Sorry, mate.
Belonging.
Belonging. Yeah, it's a sense of belonging. Yeah, that's there you go. You summed it up.
Well, I think, I mean, and the other, it's not the other side of the coin because it's not a binary. It's not, it's another kind of piece of the puzzle, is when you're explicit about this and your team's really bought in and you've got a group of aligned people, when you're explicit about it in the hiring and recruiting process and you actually share it with people, and then they find out that, yeah, these are actually real and these are real expectations when they're talking to other members of the team before they join, you're going to get more people attracted to and wanting to join your team who are already aligned, who are already kind of feeling that wanting to do those things, right? If I look at the Boy Scouts, or if I look at any organization and they really live their values and they're explicit about the values and they are not my values, right? I don't
Mhm.
align with them, then I can opt out of that before, doing damage either to myself or the organization, right? And kind of
Yeah,
back to the, let's loop all the way back to the beginning. These cultures and values exist whether they're explicit or not, right? And when I know,
100%.
I know how you do this because we did this together with my company way back, but how I do it now is really finding out the core values or defining the core values for an organization is much more of a discovery process than it is an invention process,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot
You,
of those
you actually
expectations are
raised
already
a
there.
really interesting topic there. You've
Mm.
raised a really interesting topic. So, and I've heard two really good arguments on either side of this. Should values be by design? In other words, aspirational. Shall we aspirationally design them to be aspirational so they're a
Mhm.
little bit better than where we are, or should they be reflective of what we are now? Big debate.
I Well, and where I kind of land on that is they they need to be real. They need to matter to the team. And by the way, that doesn't mean if you've got 25 people in a room and you're discovering, I'm doing it in my air quotes now if you're not watching, but you're discovering the values, and one person doesn't agree or is saying, well, no, but the rest of the group's kind of looking at each other, that's your value.
Mm,
That person
yeah,
is not aligned with the value, right? So I really do believe they mostly exist. And if you have a well functioning team at the moment, you can do a lot of great discovery and stuff, but realizing also that some of the people may be dissenters, that's fine, but we're not going to make our decision we're not going to lower the bar on our real expectations. What I've kind of
yeah,
compromised with a couple of clients on is if you've got five core values, you get to have either the fifth one or the sixth one is kind of maybe allowed to be aspirational, um, but they can't all be. If they
mm,
all are, then we're never going to meet the bar, the standard, over and over again. And if we just keep saying we wish we were better at this or we wish we behaved better, I mean, if one of your values is something around being polite, then be polite. It's not, well, they're rude 90% of the time, but polite some of the time, so we're going to let them pass. Like, no, that doesn't work.
there's in the book, there's a couple of exercises, two in particular,
Hmm.
about to facilitate business owners to discover their core values. And I remember once I was working with a client, and the boss was a really strong eye profile and very sort of flamboyant and extravagant and that type of thing. And he wanted to be the best in the world. And his values that he came up with prior to this meeting was, we are the best company in the world. We have the best staff. We just, and I just said, well, okay, that's cool, but it's a tad aspirational, mate. The best company in the world. You're a small mechanic shop from Morrinsville. That might not be the case. And I think you said it really well, mate. I think that there could be a level of aspiration and maybe one or two, absolutely, but I think it has to be reflective of who you are and where you are. And yeah, I I still remember the conversation. Really, really lovely guy. Had to tone him right down. I'll tell you what,
Well,
if you're interested, if you've got a moment, I'll take you through mine, because I have a very strong set of personal
do it.
values which play out in the business world. So
Yeah.
I do mine. I'll share the screen to those people who are viewing, and this is how I do it. So the acronym for my personal values is PG Labs. P is passion for learning.
And this is a great way to remember them too, and have your team remember them, is to create some kind of acronym. And it doesn't, by the way, have to be the first letter of the core value. It can be one of the more important words to stimulate the memory. Right? So we've got PG Laps from Matt.
So the first one is passion for learning. If people are going to engage with me, and if I'm going to look at my values, then learning is a natural part of what we are about, what I do, the way that I do it. And that has multifacets. So there's different layers to passion for learning. Learning is an intensely humbling thing, because what you're doing by learning is you're realizing that you don't know all the answers, and I don't know all the answers, and learning helps me understand a bit more. So passion for learning, and I won't work with clients who don't have a passion for learning. If they just sit there and go, I know, then I'm probably not the right guy for them.
Right, right.
Um,
So your others are,
so there's go the extra mile. So the G part is go the extra mile, and what that means to me in my business is if I've got a client who needs maybe a bit of extra time, bit of extra help, something like that, then not a problem. I can do that, and I will do that, because that's what I'm all about. We go the extra mile. My clients go the extra mile for me. I go the extra mile for them. The third one is L, PG Laps. L for Laps is live what I teach. I don't ask my clients to do anything that I wouldn't do for myself. So we talk about strategic planning, we talk about values, we talk about all that sort of stuff. I have to do it myself. Otherwise, I won't be living what I'm teaching. So I have to do that. The third, the A is abundance mentality. The P is for people first. And finally, the S on the end of PG Laps is for straight talk. And anyone who knows me will know that that's exactly what they get. So what I do with these as the tool, if you will, is I will explain these to my clients before I take them on. I will sit there and go, okay, these are my values. I will live them. I do live them. Talk to my clients about it. So my sales process for my clients is really simple. I give them a list of clients, some of them ex-clients, current clients, and I say, call any of them, ask anything, but come back either convinced you want to work with me or not.
or not.
And you have to call 3. You're not allowed to call any less than 3. And if you don't, then I won't take you on. That's me doing what I love, what I teach.
Well, and this brings up a whole nother thing. We have some similarities, some overlap in our values, right? And obviously, if we're working together, we probably do. But they're expressed a little differently. So you said live what you teach. One of my values is walk the walk. which in essence means the same thing. I eat my own dog food. I the stuff we teach, I implement in my business, which is why both of us can tell you what our core values are, right?
Mm.
Another is be curious, because, and that was the one for me where I'm naturally curious, but sometimes my interactions, it's a good reminder to be more curious and to continue to ask questions and delve in, and maybe
Yeah.
not jump to conclusions quite as soon. So for me, that's a
Mm.
little, maybe not aspirational, but more advisory, right? Reminder.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
stay frugal. Even if we're making money and doing well, you don't go blowing it on stuff. You keep it. I just mean cheap, but it means putting it in the right places, right? Spending it the right
Well,
way,
frugal
making
doesn't
investments.
mean cheap. It means spending the right money in the right places, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes that gets misinterpreted, but and that's kind of why I pointed out. But and then another one, judge on character. So that's really important to me. But a friend of mine just came back from Texas, and he got a pin while he was at this conference that says "Y'all means all," and I love that. I was raised in the South. I still say "y'all." My family makes fun of my California wife and kids make fun of me about it. The little one is now started to pick it up as a thing, but it's not always well received at school or other places. So out here, but I say y'all all the time, but because that's kind of what I grew up with, and I like the word too because it's a plural, right? Which in English, proper English, you and you are both singular and plural, and that annoys me. So I'll say y'all. But I love that idea, and I might even adapt that as because I think it's even better. Like y'all means all, means everybody. I don't want to judge people based on their traditional demographic. A lot of the times the way we talk about folks or the way we look at them, I think that's kind of ridiculous. I would much rather be working with people who share similar values regardless of their backgrounds or, whatever else, all the crazy definition things that we try to impose on each other. They're not as
That's
reflective of who
awesome.
we really are. So yeah, might be stealing that one. But that brings up the other point too. They're not set in stone. I mean, the idea is, the feeling, the conception is, but the words themselves might evolve over time, and you might
Mm.
get a better definition, a clearer picture, something that resonates more with you as you know,
Mm.
as you move along the journey.
Well, that's just a wordsmithing issue, isn't it? And sometimes the words don't come to us in the first instance that,
Oh, or
we
even the
kind of know
third.
what we're trying to say. Yeah. We kind of know what we're trying to say, but sometimes the words just don't flow freely. So as a result of that, it's like, oh, well, okay, I'm trying to say this. How do I do it? And one day you'll stumble across a phrase and go,
Mhm.
look at that.
Yeah. Well,
I
I mean
remember,
that
I remember,
again,
sorry.
I'm the great example of that. Like judge on character is really clunky, right? I mean, it reminds me what it is, but I don't really like it. I never liked the phrase, but I kept trying to figure out what's another better phrase, right? And yeah, anyway, that wordsmithing can be important. Really can help you to
Oh,
resonate
I
and
think it's
figure out
very
something.
important. I think it's really important, and I think you just talking about y'all means all. Um, I think that's the highlight of it because it has to be words that mean something to you, not just someone in the C-suite. It has to be some words that relate to you as a person. One of the great examples I got from a book years ago is I bought a book called The No Arsehole Rule. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's a really good book. And I gave it to a client of mine because he was searching for the words to encapsulate all of the values that it meant basically to be part of his business. And I bought him this book and it said the no arsehole rule. And he goes, no assholes. And I'm like, there you go, mate. It saw it coming. It was beautiful. And that was his language. He works with
Mhm.
rough, tough guys and and that sort of thing when they swear and they curse and that sort of thing. And that there was like, cool, if you want to be part of my business, no assholes allowed, mate. That's
Right.
how it is.
And if you're put off by that, then okay, maybe we
Yeah.
shouldn't do business together. Kind of like, straight talk, right?
Totally. And the funny thing is I've been doing this helping businesses out for a very long time now. The more that you understand your values, the better you will be at executing them. I've fired 6 clients, and all 6 clients have been because they have not lived the values. They haven't been aligned, or I haven't been aligned to what they consider to be normal. And each of them is a story in its own right. I'm not going to bore you today, but Certainly, the
Right.
more that you understand these, the more that it's easier to live. And when you live them, you are, if they're the right set of values, then you'll be a more successful business person. You'll have a more successful business, and people around you will know what they're getting and therefore be happier.
Well, and you'll be happier too. And that's the other part that I think sometimes gets left behind. Yeah, we're pushing this as a business concept. However, it's really about you and your team being happy in your own skin, being fulfilled in the things that they're doing and why they're coming to work. And last little idea we'll leave you here with before we wrap up is, I'm going to say this and we'll see what your reaction is, but people don't work for money. Okay. They want to get paid fairly. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They want to get paid. If they're working, they want to get paid, right? For a
Yeah.
job. But if you're listening to this and you've ever coached Little League, or you've ever taught Sunday school, or you've ever been part of led a youth group, or worked in Boy Scouts, or you name it, did you get paid for those things? None of those
Mhm.
organizations would exist, right? And I belong to a group of entrepreneurs down in Thai SoCal. These guys are all, to be in it, you've got to be a successful business person. They all get paid a lot in their jobs, their quote jobs, and their businesses and the things that they do. But they all volunteer for Thai. So
Mm.
some of them are, they're accredited investors, which if you know what that means, that they
Yep.
and the things that they do produce a lot of revenue, make a lot of money, but they still work for free for the right cause. So if you've got the right
Yeah.
values, you're explicit about it, you've got the right cause, the purpose, and you know where you're going, ultimately that destination, where we're trying to get to, you can inspire. I mean, imagine if you could marry these two things, right? You marry the two things and
Imagine.
the
Imagine.
yeah, right, right. And I get to do this and I get paid, right? That
Mhm.
and that's when stuff's clicking, things are good. That's kind of how I feel each day. I'm like, I don't dread a client meeting, or if I got to do something early, I'm like, I'm finally doing what I really love to do, and
Yeah.
it's so much fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Matt Damon, you can find this clip. They did a thing on him, and I don't know a ton about him personally or anything, but I saw this clip, a documentary they were doing of the Bourne series and how it was made, and
Oh yeah.
they were teaching him to drive the car, right, not have a stuntman do it. And he was on the roof of a parking lot and he was accelerating a car really fast and then sliding it sideways into a parallel spot next to the wall between two other cars, right?
Okay.
And he's doing this at high speed down, and then he locks it up, slides it sideways right between the two cars, doesn't hit the wall, and then he jumps out of the car and he looks at the camera and he goes, "Can you believe they're paying me to do this?" Right?
Love it.
And he's just like, "Oh, it's like a kid in a candy shop.
It's
your thing you're
awesome.
doing." Yeah, and I mean, we flow in and out of it a little bit sometimes, right? He's not going to do that in every movie for every scene for everything, but pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just before we go, just talking about values. The first section of the book, of the best small business in the world book and program, is there's a whole section dedicated to values. There's a couple of exercises. There's one which is kind of a litmus test for the first one, which is really cool. So if that does ring a bell, if what we've talked about today has actually sort of highlighted something that you want to work on, it's in the book. You can pick it up. Click the link below wherever it is,
Right.
and go and do it straight away. And look forward to finding out what your values are about, and how you've worded them and phrased them, and how they play out.
And you can get in touch with us, thebestbusinessintheworld.com. We're looking forward to your questions, interaction, and stuff. We have something we're doing now with the stump us, stump the chumps. You can submit your big hairy, I think Matt calls them curly questions, uh, to us, and we will see if we can come up with either an answer or help you with resources to point you the right direction, whether that's on the podcast or just a direct response or something. So hit us up.
So
You know,
what we actually want, we want the hardest, curliest question that you can possibly think of, real question in your
mhm,
business, and we will help you solve it. So just give us the hardest thing that you can possibly think of, and we will do our best to solve the problem,
Yeah.
to give you the idea about the way forward.
That thing that's unresolved, that's keeping you up at night, that you're waking up at 4 in the morning on, whatever it is, hit us up, and we want to help you out.
The
Thanks,
harder,
Scott.
the better.
The harder, the better. All right. All
Thanks,
right.
Danny.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.